Most gardeners today are, well, addicted to inputs, and that addiction didn't happen by accident. The moment synthetic nitrogen became cheap after World War II, we stopped building soil and started force-feeding crops. The result is honestly pretty predictable. Compacted beds, declining organic matter, rising pest pressure, and plants that look good early but collapse under stress. Farm logic. Before industrial fertilizer dominated agriculture, growers had no choice but to build resilient soil systems. During wartime shortages, especially in the 1940s, people grew serious amounts of food in small spaces without pallets of bagged amendments. They relied on biology, carbon, minerals, and, well, a fair bit of discipline. If you're serious about growing food and reducing dependency on constant purchases, subscribe to Farm Logic. This channel is about systems that work when supply chains don't. They understood that compost wasn't optional, it was structural. Wartime growers didn't treat compost as a mild supplement, it was the backbone. In small garden plots, they routinely applied the equivalent of 2 to 3 inches of finished compost per year. That's roughly 1.5 to 2 cubic yards per 1,000 square feet annually. I've tested this level of application in both in-ground beds and raised beds. In a 4x8 raised bed, that translates to about 8 to 10 5-gallon buckets of finished compost spread evenly over the surface and lightly integrated into the top inch. The key difference is that compost wasn't viewed as fertilizer, it was soil builder. It increased aggregation, moisture retention, and microbial density. When I consistently apply a full 2-inch layer annually and protect it with mulch, I can cut synthetic or bottled feeds dramatically. But when I skimp at 1/2 inch, performance drops within 2 seasons. They recycled every nutrient stream available. Kitchen scraps, crop residues, wood ash, animal bedding, even paper waste were composted or reintegrated. Nothing organic left the system casually. That closed-loop mindset is something most modern gardeners ignore. In my own system, I stopped removing plant residues unless disease required it. I cut crops at the base and composted the tops. Roots stayed in place. That alone increased soil organic matter noticeably over 3 years. Wood ash was used carefully, not dumped recklessly. Applied at about 5 to 10 pounds per 100 square feet once a year at most. It supplied potassium and trace minerals. I've tested this in beds growing tomatoes and brassicas. When applied sparingly and only where soil tests show low potassium, yields improve without spiking pH dangerously. Over-application, though, will lock up micronutrients. That's the trade-off. They built soil carbon intentionally, not accidentally. During wartime, green manures and cover crops were standard practice, not trendy, standard. Rye, clover, vetch. These weren't decoration, they were soil tools. In a small backyard garden, I've run fall rye at about 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet, let it grow through winter, then cut it before seed set and left the residue as surface mulch. That single cycle adds significant root biomass and improves infiltration. In raised beds, I use crimson clover after summer crops. Once flowering begins, I cut it and leave it on the surface. Nitrogen contribution is modest, but root channels and biological activity increase significantly. You know, the mistake modern gardeners make is turning cover crops into till-in events. Wartime growers often cut and left residue. Minimal disturbance preserves fungal networks. When I stopped digging cover crops under and instead terminated them at the surface, soil structure improved faster. They relied on mulch as protection, not decoration. Bare soil was rare. Straw, leaves, chopped crop residue, beds were covered. A 2 to 3 inch mulch layer reduces evaporation, buffers temperature swings, and feeds fungi slowly. In one of my test plots, I compared mulched versus bare soil, under identical compost rates. The mulched bed required roughly 30% less irrigation through peak summer. Plant stress during heat waves dropped noticeably. Mulch isn't optional if you want resilient soil, but the material matters. Fresh wood chips can temporarily tie up nitrogen if incorporated deeply. Left on the surface, they're beneficial. I prefer aged leaf mulch in vegetable beds and coarser chips in pathways. They paid attention to mineral balance even without lab reports. While soil testing wasn't widespread for home gardeners in the 1940s, practices like rotating crops and using diverse compost inputs naturally balanced minerals. In modern practice, I confirm with testing every 2 to 3 years. If calcium is low, I'll add gypsum at roughly 10 to 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet without shifting pH dramatically. If magnesium is excessive, I avoid dolomitic lime. Wartime soil management emphasized diversity of inputs: manure from different animals, plant residues from different crops, ash from hardwoods. That diversity prevented extreme imbalances. In hydroponic-adjacent soil zones I manage, mineral runoff accumulates. Instead of discarding that nutrient flow, I filter it through compost-rich beds with biochar included at about 10% by volume. Biochar acts as a buffer, absorbing excess nutrients and releasing them slowly. That mirrors older practices of capturing fertility rather than wasting it. They avoided constant, deep tillage. Heavy mechanized tillage became common post-war as machinery scaled up. Before that, smaller plots relied more on hand tools and shallow cultivation. In my own trials, annual deep digging reduced earthworm populations and collapsed aggregates. When I shifted to shallow surface cultivation, no deeper than 2 inches, and relied on compost top dressing, soil tilth improved year over year. Wartime necessity forced efficiency. Disturbing soil aggressively costs energy and labor. Let biology do the work instead. They grew food densely and rotated intelligently. Victory garden systems often emphasized intensive spacing. That reduced weed pressure naturally and maximized output per square foot. But rotation was strict. Heavy feeders like cabbage were followed by legumes or lighter feeders. In a 4-bed rotation I run today, tomatoes move every year, followed by root crops, then legumes, then leafy greens. Compost rates adjust slightly depending on crop demand, but the base system remains consistent. Dense planting also shades soil, reducing evaporation. When spacing is thoughtful rather than overcrowded, yield per square foot increases without increasing fertilizer. The common myth is that high productivity requires high synthetic input. Wartime gardens disproved that under real constraints. Now here's the part corporations won't advertise. Healthy soil reduces dependency. When organic matter climbs above 5% and structure stabilizes, nutrient retention improves dramatically. That means fewer purchased amendments. In one of my long-term beds where organic matter increased from 2.8% to just over 6% across 5 seasons, nitrogen inputs dropped by nearly half while yields remained stable. That didn't happen from secret products, it happened from compost discipline, mulch protection, cover crops, minimal disturbance, mineral balance, and residue recycling. These practices aren't nostalgic, they're practical. They work in raised beds, backyard plots, and even integrated systems tied to hydroponics. The scale changes, but the principles don't. If you want soil that improves instead of degrades, stop chasing short-term feeding and start building structure and biology. Compost at meaningful rates, protect the surface, grow cover crops, recycle nutrients, disturb less, monitor minerals. The lessons forced by scarcity decades ago are still the most reliable methods we have. If this kind of practical soil strategy helps you grow stronger food with fewer inputs, subscribe to the Farm Logic YouTube channel and share this video with another serious gardener. The more we rebuild soil literacy and apply proven principles instead of marketing trends, the more resilient our gardens and our harvests become year after year.